Revealing the Word. Today we are going to take a journey together and discover the hidden Word of Yahuwah. So put on your broad-brimmed hats and get ready to excavate the Word with us, because we Shema Elohim with you. Shalom. This is your host, Jessica Arianis of Ha'ako Kala Radio, and my special co-host, Eric Bissell. In this episode of Revealing the Word, we will discuss the word Ahav, or Ahava, which is love, and our intimate relationship with Debar, the Word. We will interview Nitza Moshe of Remnant Radio as she expounds upon the word Debar and gives us some insight into how this word works in our lives. Shalom, Eric.
Shalom, Jessica, and hello to the listeners there.
Out there in Radio Land. And Nitza Moshe, thank you for being with us today. How are you?
Shalom. Very good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I got two individuals that are ecstatic about the Paleo Hebrew together on one show. I thought this would be interesting, especially since we will be opening up the word Ahava as well as the word itself, which is Debar. And I know you have lots to share about that word, Nitz. I know it's a passion of yours to cipher the word and to break it open so that we can get a revelation, a vision.
Amen.
Eric, I know that recently you officiated a wedding up in Canada, and you were asked to cipher that word Ahava, or Ahava, or Ahab, which is love in Hebrew.
Well, I believe it was our last recording we did together. I read through this, so the listeners which have heard that might find this familiar, but sometimes it's good to hear something a second time. So it's about 5 minutes or so. I could go ahead and just read what I wrote up about this word, if you'd like.
Please share with us.
I was asked to simply look at the word Ahava and discuss it. So there's nothing necessarily mystical, but my study is literally just looking at the way that a word is spelled, looking at the meaning of each letter, looking at the meaning of every pair of two letters, and then using the dictionary, if there's a three-letter verb root, looking at what that means. And sometimes there's various meanings because there's different vowel points. And in Paleo Hebrew, I've never seen any vowel points with it, so I take into consideration all the various meanings that any particular three-letter verb root, you might say, has. Even if the meanings seem to be rather diverse, completely one disconnected to the other, I try to take them all into consideration. And similar to mathematics, where you have fractions that look like they're completely different denominators, then you find what they call the lowest common denominator. So when looking at various different meanings of a word, which don't seem related at all, I try to find a basis of connection, like the lowest common denominator, that I can wrap up together what might be the possible essence of the word. So in which case, having a word with meanings which look like they're not connected actually forces you to find another, you might say, level of depth within the word that brings them all together. So actually, when you find a word with meanings which don't seem to have any relationship to each other, it's a great opportunity for finding more in a word than had you found a simple definition where they all matched. So this talk here, this speech, this debar, about the word Ahava. I'll just go ahead and read it. The Hebrew word for love is Ahava, a four-letter word spelled Aleph, Hey, Bet, Hey. Hebrew is an engineered language. Looking closer, dissecting the word, the prefix Aleph, Hey means I am or I will. At least that's the way it's used when you see the translation in the scripture, wherever you see the phrase in English, I am, or perhaps I will, you go over and you look at the word in the Hebrew, and it typically starts with the letter Aleph. It's personal, intentional, volitional, proactive, and determined. It's this attitude of the individual that's speaking or doing something. The next two letters, Hey, Bet, literally is the verb meaning give. And the word bet hey is translated as in her, or with her, or through her. So ahava could be read, love is, I will give through her, in her, and with her. It is not, I will give to her, yet it is the expression of the author, the I am, choosing to project himself through the vehicle of the her. Again, the he suffix of that word is typically rendered as her, though you could look at many words that end in a hey and you'll see that they're not translated as saying the word her, but it's this expression or revealing or opening up of the words you might say. For example, the word zadik is righteous. The word zadikah, ending in the letter hey, would be righteousness, which is the word righteous being expressed as righteousness. So that's the typical example.
So that makes me think of the word for the word give in Hebrew is Yahab, or it has the yud prefix to the word ahab, which technically or literally actually means to give or to ascribe something, to give or to bestow, to set upon, to set or to take upon, and it's this gift. It's a gift giving. So what I'm hearing you say in regards to the word ahab, it seems to me like this word is something that is bestowed upon you. It's given.
Sure. The interesting thing about Hebrew is I heard someone tell me the other day that Hebrew has rules, and quite often there's the breaking of those rules. When you look at grammatical, you might say structure or precedence or, well, grammatical rules. For example, in English, there's this saying, I before E except after C. Well, the word foreign doesn't have a C, but it's F-O-R-E-I-G-N. So it's a broken rule of I before E except after C. So that's similar to Hebrew. So when you're learning regular grammar in Hebrew, you have to remember that there's numerous exceptions. So these things which we see as a tendency are quite often found to be otherwise when you look through the scriptures as the way that other authors or other publishers have chosen to translate a word. One of the things I've tried to do is actually notice how certain Hebrew words are translated, which sets up, you might say, the frame of mind or the typical way that translators encounter a situation. And they're all over the place, which means that you can't, by learning Hebrew, you can't be too locked in to a rule of how the language works. I mean, there are tendencies, but they're not necessarily rules. Anyway, one of the things I did with studying this word ahava is to compare it to another word that's spelled similarly, and that's another method, another mechanism for figuring out what a word means. If you can find a similar spelled word with a type of translation, then it'll give you some clue as to the way the structure of the word affects what it really means. So this is spelled aleph, hey, bet, hey. The similar word is halef, hey, yod, hey. So aleph, hey, yod, hey is ehyeh, which is actually the word used in Exodus 3 when Moshe was at the burning bush and he said, who shall I say sent me? And the voice speaking to him said, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. Tell them Ehyeh sent you. So if we're looking at aleph, hey, bet, hey compared to aleph, hey, yod, hey, the difference is the yod and the bet in the third letter position. So, but this word aleph, hey, yod, hey states that the self of the first person, the aleph, is expressing through the substance of what he puts his hand to make or do. That's the yod. So the same way that an artisan speaks through his craftsmanship, or as a musician speaks through the notes she plays, so the heavens declare the glory of Elohim. The earth and its inhabitants portray his majesty. And there what I'm trying to do is read how you would look at aleph, hey, yod, hey. So the aleph is expressed, that's hey. In the yod, that what the hand is put toward to create, is expressed, hey. So in seeing this word, ehyeh, Yahuwah Savot has portrayed himself as he gives himself into his people. So that means the people of Israel, his people, are a conduit through the agency of Israel, which is also the same model as through the Mashiach. So this sets up this picture of a transmission linkage, a progressive order of sharing responsibility from one to the next. So what I see here in these letters is that the picture is that the husband's glory is expressed through his wife. He gives himself in her. She expresses his intention, as she herself is the embodiment of his purpose or his heart. She then is the container of him, which is the meaning of the word bet, a container. So as the Aleph's bet, or the bet that belongs to the Aleph, so is she his work of art or his dwelling place. So you could say as a relay, it's the husband's position to receive from Elohim, who freely gives, and then the husband exalts Yahuwah in giving to his wife, who displays her beauty in giving others what has been given to her. And that's the role of, you might say, a human husband and wife. It also describes the role of Israel to Yahweh. Yahweh gives to Israel, Israel as the priest to the world, supposed to turn and give Yahuwah's stuff to everyone else, freely given. Which means if something is not flowing, it's the man's responsibility to go to the source, to Yahuwah, the proverbial fount of living water, which in Hebrew is expressed as Mayim Chayim, to make sure that he's receiving properly all that's available to them. Therefore, if there's something wrong, man has got to fix it. But see, men are designed to fix things. So every time there's a problem, if it's a physical thing, we look for another tool to apply to the situation. And if it's an interpersonal thing, men are always trying to fix things. And sometimes they get bashed around for that, but they're actually designed to do that.
So, Eric, it made me think of, here you are talking about this giving freely. And when we think about that reciprocal relationship between Yahuwah and his people and that line of communication that's being restored in this hour, it really is an expression of love that Yahuwah speaks to us as well as listens. And so I was actually talking to another person today, and we were talking about a symbiotic relationship and why there seems to be so much conflict within relationships, not just the relationships within our own homes, but as we take that dysfunction out into the body of Messiah, we find then that there seems to be the same conflict, whether it's through, arguments. We have all this division taking place. We have all this judgment and people saying, well, it should be this moon, it should be that, it should be this. You have all this division within the camps, and it doesn't seem like we can remain cohesive. I was telling this person, I believe personally that it's because we don't understand the dynamics of a relationship. And when we come together as functioning cells, which make up the whole of a body, we are cells. And when we come together, we're not connecting properly because, in my opinion, a lot of times we don't know as a cell what we're purposed to do. What is our purpose? How do we function as a whole? And so when you think about a nuclear family, a father, a mother, and then you have your children, that's a nuclear family. And then it becomes a symbiotic relationship, one that feeds off of each other and thrives. And so if say for example, the mom knows her roles, she knows what her responsibilities are, and she's functioning every day as she sees herself, and then the children are doing the same. They function as children. They each know their role as far as like the eldest to the youngest and what they're required to do and expected to do. But say, for example, the dad has a drinking problem or he's an alcoholic and his role is being usurped and he's neglecting his role. And so what happens is, even though that's the case, they still begin to function, but it's called dysfunction. But they still have a working relationship with each other in that group. But what ends up happening is you see that through that channel or through that individual, conflict can come in because the individual doesn't know his position or his purpose. So there can be arguments, there can be strifes, and then there can be hostility, there can be all sorts of stuff that can come in through that individual because he's not functioning in his role. I think when we don't know our purpose, we contribute as a whole. What are we called to do? What is Yahuwah saying to us in this hour? What is the agenda? What's the plan here? And how does he determine to work through us? And when we can't hear him, it makes it difficult for that reciprocity to flow. It makes it difficult for us to flow within a body. And so then conflict can come in through that individual or through that source. And we then begin to look at other people and we begin to judge their works. We say, oh, what I don't like the way they do that, or I don't like the way they do this, or if they don't do things my way, or if they don't do things this way. Again, because we're not focusing on what we're called to do and simply doing it and allowing other people to do the same. So I believe that even in this hour, Yahuwah is restoring the line of communication so that he can bring purpose to the body on an individual level and on a corporate level, so that we can begin to function harmoniously as a symbiotic entity. As we are in relationship with each other, we begin to function as a whole, as a complete, healthy body, which is the body of Messiah. And I think it was Dave who said earlier, it's not the pipe that receives the glory, but what flows through the pipe. And I thought that was interesting, that we need to recognize it's not the fact of who we are, but what's flowing through us. And when we can learn to flow, like the veins that allow the blood to flow through the body to cause it to be, so then we too, hearing the voice of Yahuwah and receiving that love, that free gift, that free offering, receiving what he has for us, knowing that he loves and cares for us, and that he's listening to us, and that we are heard. We are heard. Not only is it Shema Yahuwah, not only just hearing him, but knowing in our heart of hearts that he hears us as well. And when we have that right relationship, when our relationship with him is restored and it becomes a healthy flow, we can then begin to flow towards our neighbors. We begin to become a healthy organism, a living cell.
Well, if I could add one thing to what you're saying there.
Absolutely.
Is that it is Israel's burden to invite and even allure Yahweh to return to dwell with us, enthroned in us, in that we are all he's got, his kadoshi, as he calls it, his betrothed, beloved, set apart. So, in other words, it's not the people of the world who are going to invite Yahuwah to come back and dwell, you might say, even on the earth or in our presence. It's Israel that's supposed to do that. Israel's job is like the wife to the husband wanting to make the husband come home. Israel's job is to make Yahuwah want to come home to us. And as we remember how we are left to ourselves, abandoned, if we betray him, we're actually forsaken by our own treachery. It was Israel who turned away from Yahuwah, and he cast her aside, threw it to her own devices. But he said he would return when Israel returned to him. So that's a picture that the woman's fidelity and gracefulness attract her husband's attention to be with her. So the word ahava could be read as, I will be with her. So that statement of the word is not just I will be in her or flowing through her, as you mentioned, the pipe and what flows through the pipe, but the fact that it could be read as the letter bet as with, Yahweh is basically expressing in the word love that he wants to be with his people. I will be with her. This is virtually a prophetic statement. And then the word ehyeh, aleph he yod he, could be read as the ever-flowing and outpouring. This is what flows through the conduit. Gives to the man, the Adam, who is the work of his hand, you might say as a constant waterfall flowing. So if you picture a river with this waterfall flowing, that's kind of a picture of what ehyeh means. And then if you look at the meaning of the word yod he vav he, Yahuwah, you could see that there's this hand which gives to the vav, which is this connector, which then turns around and expresses. So the man who gives to his wife, who is actually his own song, he causes her to exist. So the woman, she who has filled herself with her husband's generosity, sings. She translates his heart for others to hear. Her voice is this tangible gift, which is, you might say, the manifestation or the emanation of that which is otherwise invisible, which is just the husband's intention to give her. So her hands giving expressed freely as overflow to her family, they to the world around them. So this theme that you're talking about of Yahuwah ehyeh pouring out, and he is chosen, as he describes in the scripture, to pour out his heart, his intention, his words, his insights of wisdom and life vitality into Israel. And Israel's job obligation as his kadoshi, his betrothed, his wife, is to then give to the world. And when the world is languishing, as we see now around us, we can blame the world, we can blame the leaders of the world who make stupid decisions or who make decisions for their own gain. But when you look back at the scriptures, this is our fault, Israel's fault, because Israel has not been receiving of Yahuwah, the true, pure source of living water, and Israel then has not been content with Yahweh to let it flow through Israel to the rest of the world. And so we can actually look at the whole condition of what's here and say, we have got to get back in line to do what we're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, the world can get worse. And we can't blame the other people because they are taking over Israel's job description by running this place because we betrayed Yahweh.
Right. It's about purpose and function. And what I hear you saying is that this is our purpose. This is why we were created. We were created to receive or to hear, to be in communication or to be in communion with the one who Amar, the Debar, who speaks the word. And that word is brought forth in love. And genuine love will be an obedient expression of what he's conveying, his purpose, his intent. Reminds me of the Psalm 55:22. It says, "Cast your burden upon Elohim, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved." Well, that word burden right there is that word Yahavah. It's related to Ahava, or love, but with the yud prefix, and it literally means a burden, something given, something that is heavy, a gift. And again, it's related to the word love, or to give indiscriminately. So here, Yahuwah is saying, here is my burden. My burden is easy. My yoke is light. Here is my burden. Come learn of me. Right, Nitsa, I think you're really interested, and I know that you speak, or have spoken in the past about the word debar, and what that actually looks like to us, and I'm hoping that you'll explain a little bit about that. But I know back in Genesis, when Yahuwah created the man, it's in his image and in his likeness that he created him, and then it says he breathed. That means scattered seeds. So here we see a picture of Yahuwah scattering his seed, his DNA, he's replicating the pattern in which he was established, the uncreated one, and he is causing him to exist in that pattern, to be, to live, so that he could be a harmonious, like I said, that symbiotic relationship, so he can be in harmony with his debar, with his word, not in conflict with it, but working together with it, so that he can produce after its own kind. And we see that pattern throughout history, the history of the word that was given to us. We see that pattern, that duplication, those cyclical patterns that seem to flow. And we also want to be brought back. We want to come back to that revelation that we were created to house his seed so that we can produce after his kind, so that we can flourish and multiply here on earth, even in the Shamayim. So again, what does it mean then that he's giving to us in love his word, his debar? And how do we house that frequency or that debar? How do we house that pattern within us? Well, we would first have to understand what is the debar, what is the word.
My turn?
Yes, ma'am.
You're setting me up. No. Okay. Well, the thing I like about the ancient Hebrew, and the reason I love it, is I obviously don't study it in depth. I don't have the time, but whenever I do a word study, whenever I'm doing my scripture studies, I don't want to just stop with the English or the modern Hebrew. I want to see the picture, because I think that whole concept of a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think that one of the things I like about ancient Hebrew is that there are no vowel markings. There's a thing where you can kind of see it is going to be. There's this bigger picture concept. I think of it as how Elohim looks down on the face of the earth. He has a much bigger picture or concept, and we get stuck on, looking down closely to things in detail sometimes. And so I like the idea that you can have block logic when you're looking at the language. You can open up your mind that it doesn't mean just this. You can use a Venn diagram, where you see the commonalities. And so that is one of the reasons why I love it so much, because it gives me much more understanding. It opens the block logic, and concept is that, okay, I can put this on the shelf, but I can put other things up there with it too, and then I can see a much bigger picture. It's like adding pieces to the puzzle, and I can rearrange them, and I can see different facets of his word and the understanding. And of course, I talk a lot about debar, mostly because it just shows up in everyday things. It shows up in science. It shows up, when the New Age movement and the scientists all talk about frequencies and vibrations and electromagnetic energy, because they don't have Elohim. They don't understand who the source is. But if we look at the letters, and this is the way I look at Dabar, is that you have a Dalet, which is a door, and in ancient Hebrew it would have been like a tent flap, like an Indian, almost like a Indian loin, where you flap it up, but they would flap it up over the tent. And so when you move a door or a flap to a door or a window, then it's swinging back and forth. It's making waves. It's making vibrations. It's causing frequencies. And then the next letter is Bet, which can be the house, the family, or can mean inside of something. And then we have the Resh or the Rosh, which is the head, the beginning. And it's also very closely connected to the word order, when things are in order. And, of course, Dabar is part of that root, that family of words where we get the word the bumblebee or a bee colony. And what do bees do? They work very much in a colony and an order. So by just taking the pictures of the word Dabar, which gets translated into English as the word or the living word, you literally have a vibrating living word. And when we look at that in Genesis 1, 1, 2, and 3, we see that his breath, his words, his speaking vibrated and hovered over the water. And when you understand that water conducts electricity, which he is light and energy, and from that everything else was created. So, and I believe this is connected to the covenant in Jeremiah chapter 33, where he talks about, I made a covenant with night and day. I think he's showing us the opposing forces, the positive and the negative. If you're a New Agey person, you might say it's the yin and the yang. Most New Age people who are involved in witchcraft and other things, they don't understand and they do not realize that these things that they find to be true are not in the right context, and it's actually there in the Hebrew, and it's in the ancient Hebrew, Paleo Hebrew. And because of Dave Matthews, I've started beginning to look at numbers. So like we look at the words, and like Eric's very good at, you look at the parent and you look at the roots and all the words that are connected to a word so that you get more revelation, more understanding. Well, there's a number system, and I was just watching a video where scientists are talking about there is a divine one person, of course they don't necessarily call him a person, creator, and they say it's all based on binary code, the 0 and the 1, nothing and something. And so when you start listening to this and understanding, oh my gosh, they're talking about the vital life force of the Dabar, of the living word that holds everything together. And so when I look at that word that Eric's talking about, Ahav, which I believe gets translated into love usually, I went ahead and looked it up while he was talking, and it has a value or a numeric value of the number 8. And we all know that 8 is restoration. So love does cover a multitude of sins. Love is the answer. Of course, the problem is what defines love. And we know that love is what the Torah and the commandments define. To be righteous and to love is to do his commandments. But when we look at the words that are associated in the English connected to their Hebrew for the number 8, look at these words in connection to what you guys have been talking about, that the woman or the bride, Israel, his people, she is to receive that Dabar, that life-giving frequency and breath that he speaks out. Then she receives it. She gives it out because she is the multiplier. She is the vessel through which she receives his word, receives his seed, his light, his energy and life force, and she's the multiplier so that she produces children, so that the bride and his people, we produce through those vibrational frequencies of his love and his word to reproduce and grow the kingdom. And so look at some of these words that are said with. One of them is breath. When we receive his living breath, his life that he gave us, what does it do? It comes in and it goes out. It comes out. There are other words associated is, what I thought was really interesting, is breast. The breast produces milk. It produces life. And it feeds and it gives. And any baby would consider the breast to be love. That is their definition when they're at that age. And we have other words like affection, of course, love, longing. Even the word fish comes up. I haven't quite made those connections. Maybe Eric can do that because I'm not sure about fish other than it produces or gives meat and substance. But the idea is that Debar and love and his word restores, it gives life, it gives breath. And it's interesting that even in the word ahava, you have the hay in there twice, and you're giving life, you're giving breath. And so this is why I encourage your listeners to get you a Strong's Concordance, but don't stop there, because that's just the beginning baby steps. Get to the Hebrew, get to the ancient or Paleo Hebrew, and start looking at the pictures and the numbers so that you can see how magnificent and ongoing his word is and all that he has to tell us. It's not just simple milk.
That's beautiful the way you expressed that word, Debar, which is all that embodies Yahuwah himself. He is the Debar, and the Yeshua is the offspring. Yahushua is the Debar made flesh. It's the manifestation of all that Yahuwah is. Even the scriptures declare that Yahushua is the expressed image of the invisible Elohim. So I want to say something really quick. With that word Debar, I want to give some information so that you can kind of see how it functions throughout the scripture, the body of scripture. Well, it's a masculine noun, and it basically means, like what Nitsa said, word, speech, matter. And then she showed you a picture of how that word functions. But this word is used with a wide range of meanings, and I just want to share that really quick. This word Debar signifies spoken words or speech. You can find that in Genesis 11:1, Isaiah 36:5, and Jeremiah 51:64. This word is defined as a command or a royal decree found in Esther 1:12, Esther 1:19. It is associated with the word report or tidings in Exodus 33:4, with advice in Judges 27, with poetic writings of David in 2 Chronicles 29:30. This word Debar is associated with business affairs in 1 Chronicles 26:32. A legal cause in Exodus 18:16, the custom or manner of activity in Esther 1:13, and something indefinite, such as in Genesis 22:16. But most importantly was the use of this word Debar to convey divine communication. Now, oftentimes that word, which is Debar, would come forth as the word of Elohim, and it would signify the revelation that was given to the prophets. You can find that in 2 Samuel 7:4, Jeremiah 25:3, and Hosea 1:1. Again, to convey divine communication or line of communication, and oftentimes signify the revelation that was given to the prophets. So in the same manner, guess what? The 10 Commandments were literally called the 10 words of Elohim, the Debar, the 10 Debar of Elohim. I don't think I'm saying it properly, but it was called the 10 words of Elohim. And you can find that in Exodus chapter 34:28, as well as Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 13.
Well, if I could throw in a comment here.
Come on in.
Nietzsche, you had mentioned something about fish. One thing I found is that the concept associated with fish, you said perhaps it means meat or provisions, but fish have a tendency to multiply abundantly. And you were actually speaking of the concept of multiplication as being the woman's job description or role in the relationship. And one thing I found is that when fish are mentioned, it has to do with that aspect of, you might say, their reputation or their Shem, right? Because Shem is not just name or what label you have, but your renown or your occupation of what you're about, which multiplication is one key
Well, that's awesome.
aspect.
Also, they would remind you, like the noon is often referred to as a fish, or like the seed or the semen, because it's life, the way it
Sure.
functions and looks. So that's pretty interesting.
I've actually heard the noon being related to the fish because the tail moves, and the frequency of the tail or the way that it moves causes life, or is similar to the way life is described as something that is full of energy or full of life, something that's vigorous, something that moves.
So, bearing that in mind, let me explain a little bit of a problem with Hebrew. So, it's said that the letter Nun is fish. And so you have Joshua, son of Nun, for example. But do you happen to know what the word that is translated fish? Do you know what that word is?
That's Dagon.
Dagon is the name of the fish god, but the interesting thing is, the reason why it's called, well, dag is fish, but the word for tickle is dag. And the way you tickle is to wiggle your finger back and forth, which is a picture of the fish's tail. And something that you do tickle is dagon. So it's just an interesting thing that in Hebrew you take concepts which are literal words, but then they actually multiply to cover the whole scope of the subject matter. For example, sometimes they're exactly the opposite. For example, the word Pesach, as in Passover, means to jump over, but it also means to be lame, which is to say you're crippled, you can't walk or you can't jump. So that's just one little example of where a word and its opposite is exactly the same word. And if you look at the word for leg, which is regal, which is either leg or feet, if you look at the English word associated with it, where you get the consonantal letters R, G, L, where we can get the word regular, you can also, or regal, you can also change the two English letters. Isaac Moseson did quite a bit of study about this, and it's where we get the word relegate and religious, or regalia. And as you contemplate the spelling of words, whether it's in English or sometimes even Greek or Latin or other languages, it'll fill in the picture of what this word is really talking about. For example, the word relegate or regal or regal there has to do with not just the fact that it's a leg or a foot, but what does the leg do? It moves about and it transports you. It's something that you do all the time, and so it means, in that case, customs, habits, and traditions is that same word. So there it's expanding. So as you study Hebrew, you're not just looking at the definition of the exact word you're looking at, but this expanded view, this multiplication of, it's almost like a bullseye, right? You've got the center target dot, and then you've got these ripples going out around it. Well, that same picture is how to understand the Hebrew language. There's the central bullseye dot. This is the word, and this is exactly what it means. But then there's these expanding ripples of associative concepts, all of which are part of the word. That in order to really understand the Hebrew, you've got to look at the biggest bullseye target, you might say, away from the bullseye that you can.
That makes sense. You guys probably have covered this, but Hebrew is based on action or verb words. And so that makes perfect sense because we are to be doers of the word, not just listeners, not just a thought concept, but actual doers. And so I think it's a whole different mindset and learning that we do when we read the Hebrew. We look at it, we look at the roots, and we go, how does that have anything to do with another word or concept? But if we can learn to look at what is the action, what is being done, what concept of action is being portrayed, then it helps to start thinking in those ways. So I think that's very good. You're right on.
Could I mention one other way of looking at the word debar?
Sure, go for it. I'm sure there's many.
That's one of your favorite words there. If you break it down into two-letter word groups, the word being spelled dalet, bet, resh. You've got dalet, bet, and then you have the word bet, resh. So part of my study is, of course, to look at the whole word, then break it down into individual letters in the double letter group. So let me ask you what you might do with this. Dalet, bet means bear, B-E-A-R, as in the animal. And bet, resh means pure and clean. So you could say the word debar is a clean bear. Now, some people have asked me or have talked to me about saying, boy, this paleo is pretty tricky stuff because there's all these different meanings, and how do you know what you're doing? And it gets confusing real fast, and so it gets so disturbing that some people just drop it, and they say, look, whether it's a dirty bear, a clean bear, what does that got to do with the word? I'm done with it. Or you could say the word bar. Some people say that means son, like in Bar Jonah, right? That's somebody's name. That means the son of Jonah. So in the dictionary, especially Ernest Klein's etymological dictionary, you'll see that the word bet resh has a number of different meanings, including a field which has been threshed, and so it's cleared. It's kind of like, it also means exterior, not interior. So how do you take all those meanings of the word bet resh, but if you look at dalet bet, not only does it mean bear, it means a whisper or to speak softly. And then you might picture a bear moving softly, but a bear is a massive hulk, but its action is to walk softly, like a whisper. And then that brings to mind, since we're talking about the fact that it means a word, that Elijah he was hiding out in the cave, he was running from Jezebel, and he was standing there and he saw this earthquake and the windstorm and the fire, but it was in the whisper, the still small voice of Yahuwah, that the bar came to him. So the fact that we can relate the concepts of Debar being this pure, clean whisper, not just a clean bear or a bear who's outside, it brings these other images that you can then, in your imagination of meditating or contemplating the words, fill in to get these other pictures, which is your own individual subjective study. You could share what you come up with with somebody else, but that's where the benefit is saying, look, this isn't just stuff to learn and memorize and hear what you or me or anybody else says, but the individual people, whoever's choosing to study these words, can put these things together and see for themselves.
Well, that's part of what makes it exciting is the Ruach HaKodesh, His Spirit, His breath, His life that is within you. He will take it and reveal it to you and relate it to where you are with Him. He knows your heart. He knows your insights. He can use that, and I think it's scary maybe for a lot of people that aren't used to working and operating in that and saying, I don't need to put Elohim in a box. He's much greater than that, and I want to see Him expand these things to me. So I just encourage people to, build a relationship with Him, listen to Him, learn to hear His Debar, His word, His life-giving frequencies and energy to your heart that He speaks, and not be afraid of that. I mean, if you're not breaking one of His commandments, I don't think you're going to hear Him wrong.
Eric brought up the word bear in relation to Debar, and you can find it Strong's number 1677, which a lot of people right now have access to. It's a lot easier to just find the Strong's number, but don't stop there. Like Eric said, there's the Red Book, which is the Klein's Etymological Dictionary, which we referenced on this show before, and but nonetheless, if you can simply look up Strong's, you can find it on the internet. It is 1677. It's Dalet Bet, and you get that word dob with a vowel point here. And I just want to give some information on that word and where it's found in the scriptures and how it's applicable there. Well, it's a masculine noun. It refers to a bear, obviously, but it refers both to female and male bears. And you can find this word used in 1 Samuel 17:34, 2 Kings 2:24, Proverbs 17:12. Now, a female in this context is especially dangerous in regards to her cubs. A female is known as one that will protect her cubs and can become extremely dangerous. Now, you can find the expression of that in 2 Samuel chapter 17, verse 8, as well as Hosea 13:8. Now, it was also compared, this word, Dalet Bet, was compared to the lion in savagery, which is found in Amos chapter 5, verse 19. But I wanted to make mention that in the Messianic reign, the bear and the cow will live together in peace, and that is found in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 7. But in conclusion, what I wanted to say between what both of you had made mention to regarding Ahava and the word Debar, and the fact that I believe that in this hour, Yahuwah is restoring the line of communication between His people, which is what Yahushua came to do. He said that you having eyes to see and ears to hear, while the word faith cometh by hearing, hearing by the Debar, or by the frequency, or by the life of the word of Yahuwah. And we know that Yahushua is the Word made flesh. So He came as a transponder, one to communicate or to bring order into the womb of chaos, or to bring order, which is what Debar ultimately means. And so we know that he came to bring order to the house. And if you ask me, which I'm going to tell you anyways, is that we in this hour need to be focused on receiving the word of Yahuwah so that it can give us life within, so that it can inspire us. We know that the word, like the fish or the tail, is supposed to quicken. It's supposed to stir up. And we know the word is alive and active and quickens. And so if the word is moving in us, it should not be something that is stagnant. The word is not supposed to be stagnant. It's supposed to be moving and thriving, and it's supposed to inspire. Back in Genesis, when Yahuwah breathed into Adam, it says that he breathed in the breath of life, the neshama hai, the breath, like Nitsa mentioned, and it caused him to be. Well, back there, when it says breathed in the breath of life, it means the inspiring force, the breath of inspiration. It means that Yahuwah expired. He expired into Adam, and Adam inspired. There's that reciprocity. Adam was the recipient, and he received the word of Yahuwah, or the pattern, or the DNA, the seed of Yahuwah, so that he can now produce after that kind. And so I think that Yahuwah is looking for a people who will become still, and who will sit before him and pay attention to that still small voice and learn of him and learn his ways and learn to hear and to communicate with him in that frame of love.
Amen.
Eric, you were going to say something?
The idea that there's this word could be taken as rather a nebulous thing, meaning, well, it's just this big cosmic word. But if you look in John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the Word was with Elohim, the Word was Elohim, all things were made through this Word, this particular Word became flesh and dwelt among us. It seems to me that this Word is actually, in its essence, the Aleph Tav. And this brings another concept into the discussion, but you said this Word is definable, is definite, it's not just this vague thing, and to study the Hebrew language is to study Aleph Tav rightly ordered, rightly fit, which is actually, in my understanding, the Hebrew alphabet. So to study the letters by which all the words are composed of, and especially to look at them in their natural, organic sequence, you might say, which is the progression of the letters Aleph and Bet, Gimel and Dalet and so forth, that is this pure, clean word, which you might say just sits there almost silent as a whisper. There's the alphabet right in front of you. But what does it mean? And the power of what this word is really saying is like the potential of this fierce she-bear for fury protecting its own. And the Aleph, I picture the Aleph Tav like that, where this Aleph Tav is this most fiercest, powerful,
ferocious,
guarding its own essence.
For sure.
But yet, which is like the cub that it protects, but yet it presents itself as silent, but it's also softly moving. It just keeps moving. It just keeps being.
Again, this word forbear is extremely interesting. That word dab, which is what we said the word forbear is, dalet bet. But did you know that the word dalet bet is the word dabab? And I know this is where you're going to go with this, so let me just give you some support here. It's a primitive root. It's the word for dab, which is bear, and it's where we get that word dalet bet for dabar. Listen to this, guys. It's from Strong's number 1680, and it means to move slowly, that is to glide. But this word forbear, dabab, also means cause to speak, to cause to speak. But this is interesting. Listen. It's a verb. It means to move slowly or to glide over. It is used in late Hebrew to mean to flow slowly or to drop, like that which the Yara comes, your doctrine fall or drop as the rain. It says in the Old Testament it is suggested of something that causes one to speak. And in the discourse of the Shulamite and her beloved, this word, dab, bear, identifies the way wine would gently or slowly move over the taster's lips and teeth. You can find that in Songs of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 9. So go ahead, Eric.
Well, that's great that you would bring that word in, because one of the things that in studying the structure, the engineering of how a word works, if you take a two-letter word and you duplicate the second letter and make it also the third, that's where you get from dalet bet, you get dalet bet bet. It doesn't really change the verb or the word, but it gives you other insights into it, which you just did, what you just provided us. So as you're thinking of the word bear, it's not just, okay, there's that animal, but now you're getting into characteristics of the bear, which is all part of it as you're studying the word, kind of like what I was mentioning before about the bullseye and the ripples around the target zone, concentric circles around the center, where if you look at the attributes of the bear and then the spelling of the word in these other ways, you will realize that this is what this Hebrew word is talking about. The fact that we use the word in speech and call it bear is only part of the story. Mm-hmm. And being that the bar of Yahweh is the Aleph Tav, now you can, because you have that information, you might say it's esoteric information. In other words, the one untranslated word, which is less than a whisper, is Aleph Tav. It's the fourth word of Genesis 1:1. Bereshit bara Elohim et. That's Aleph Tav, Hashemayim ve'et ha'aretz. In the beginning created Elohim, or God created, as it's in English, Aleph Tav the heavens and Aleph Tav the earth. So, being that we know that this Aleph Tav is the first and last letters, suggesting the whole alphabet in between, which is the word, then you might say, as one comprehends the fullness of the meaning of the Aleph Tav, in a sense that is the word of Elohim coming to you and speaking.
It's like the flow, like we mentioned earlier. The pipe, we're like the pipe, and his word flows through us, and we need to remove any congestion in us so that that word can flow freely in love. That's awesome. I'm super excited. You know, we're running out of time now. I think we brought some purpose to, or put some legs on the word debar as well as the word ahava. Nitsa, thank you for joining us. I know we didn't have enough time to review everything that Yahuwah is sharing with you, but hopefully we can do that at a later time. If there's anything you want to interject before we go.
Thank you for being here. You know, anytime you start talking about debar and you have a zeal for his revelation and his word, you don't ever have enough time.
Never. We could just go on and on. Now, Nitsa, I know that you also teach on the preparation series for the bride, and you have some discourses of linen and the shemen oil, which is, I just love when you talk about the frequencies of the linen and the shemen. And can you give us a source to contact you or to access your information?
Well, actually, we have several. One is to go to remnantremedy.net, and then we have a blog at livingstones.tabernacle.org, and then for radio archives is remnantremedy.net/radio. We're also on Hebrew Nation Radio and Messianic Lamb Radio. And don't miss our newsletter. Sign up for our newsletter from our main website, remnantremedy.net, because we do promos and articles and sales through there for the essential oils and the linens, etc. Thank you so much.
Awesome stuff. Thank you for being with us. Eric, again, it was an awesome show. I wish we had more time to go over all that he is showing us about this, but we will continue in our next show. And for you, the listener, if you have any questions, you can contact either Eric Bissell at...
My email is paleosefer, that's PALEOSFR, as in Samik Peresh, at gmail.com. Jessica, I think you should tell the listeners that you, as of soon, are going to have all these that are live on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock are going to be archived where they can access them for hearing previous shows, right?
Right, absolutely. We're actually working on the website now, trying to get the podcasts up. They're available. I just haven't had time to actually put them up, but we are working on that this week. So for those of you who want to access the pre-recorded series, you can soon at Kala Ministries.org, which, by the way, Nitsa's son, Zach, is the one that actually set that website up for me. And Nitsa, what is Zach's ministry's name, and how can they contact Zach?
iPlex.com. Or iPlex.org. IPLEX.org, I believe.
Right. He did a great job, by the way. So again, we just want to thank you for sojourning with us. So we say unto you, Zakar, remember the words of Yahushua. And he said unto them, take nothing for your journey, neither staves nor scrip, neither bread nor money, because Yahuwah Elohim Amchom.
Yivarekeka Yahuwah.
Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
This is Messianic LAMB Radio, heard around the world at www.messianiclamradio.com. A lifestyle with hope.
Después de 500 años de espera.
You're listening to listener-supported Lamb Radio. 77.7 on your radio dial, or is that God's radio dial?
Don't go away, your show will start after a brief pause.